Hey guys, DevChoi here. I want to talk real quick about something very particular, something that means a lot to me. I want to talk about why making good combat in an action platformer is hard. What makes the combat fun? First thing I really want to discuss is what exactly is an action platformer anyway. So it's a game that obviously implements platforming and action. It's obvious, right? So what exactly is the combat in these types of games? We can say that it's fast-paced combat. We can say that the platforming has certain puzzle-like elements and challenging obstacles. And those things, when you splash them, make action platformers fun. So, for example, let's talk about some specific games, right? Some games I really like that made action platforming work. First off, we have Sly Cooper. In my opinion, Sly Cooper added combat that gave another dimension to the game. You have your cane, you're walking around with your cane. You have about 3 different actions you can perform with it. You have your standard hit, your up cane, which is like an uppercut, and you have your charge ability. There's also the dimension of where and when you can actually use your attacks. This game is primarily stealth based. Normally you wouldn't want to go around just whacking enemies and things like that, but there are certain times where you'd want to take an enemy out silently because they're blocking obstacles, right? So the game doesn't stop you from doing this, but what it does do is if you do take out an enemy, it alerts all the surrounding enemies. Depending on what you're trying to do, that can make things a lot harder for you. So you have to kind of think about what you're doing combat wise if you want to platform through the rest of the level. The combat itself actually complements the platforming. So think about running around in the map, right? And you encounter a kind of tanky or a light enemy on the floor. You go to smack them up with your cane or whatever the heck you want to do, and you start aggroing everyone, right? You'd think, okay, let me just hop to a rooftop and wait it out, right? You see that in GTA all the time. You just hit someone, get a few stars, and you just hide out somewhere, maybe get on a roof or something, and you're all set. Nope, it doesn't work in this case because there's enemies waiting for you on the rooftops. That in itself adds another dimension here. You can't just hit someone, hop on a rooftop, and run away. The developer has made sure to cover all their bases when working from this kind of stealth angle here. You can be tracked from rooftops. You're not exactly safe, so it really makes you think about the things that you're doing before you do them. Also, small enemies feel small and large enemies feel threatening. Speaking for the small enemies here, you can smack them, they go flying away. They can't exactly take a whole lot of damage, but what they are is dangerous in groups. If you get a group of small enemies, they can pose a big threat if you don't handle them correctly. And as for the bigger enemies, you can whack them up, but they're kind of sponges. You whack them a good 2 times, 3 times, and they're just gonna uppercut you, send you flying right away. So that adds different varieties of enemies to the game. You're not just fighting one type of enemy continuously. They all have their own caveats and differences that make them special. And another game that I love that made combat and platformers, action platformers specifically, work is Ratchet and Clank. Speaking on Ratchet and Clank, it really brought combat to the forefront of the action platforming genre. It really focused on combat, and that much is obvious as soon as you start the game and you get your blaster. You're just going around attacking. Platforming doesn't exactly take a backseat, but it doesn't hold the spotlight as much as combat does. And that's not to say that platforming is weak in the game. It's just that the combat is what's gonna push you to get through the platforming. It's kind of an opposite what Sly Cooper is. And for Ratchet and Clank, they have really heavy use of puzzles to kind of thin out the platforming elements in the game. While it's not as platforming heavy as Sly Cooper, the puzzles will definitely keep the platforming in Ratchet and Clank fresh. And so some common themes between the two. They both use the hell out of some traps, I'll tell you that. Except in Sly Cooper, traps really are there to help the player. There's a lot of traps spread throughout the city that you can utilize to take heat off of you, take out unsuspecting guards. You really have a choice with what you can do with traps. But in Ratchet and Clank, a lot of the traps tend to work against you, so you gotta keep your eyes out for that. They both implement traps very well. They both use use a lot of puzzles as well to help keep things fresh. So you're not only attacking enemies or platforming, it's kind of like a nice buffer that keeps the game fresh. It doesn't throw too much at once at you. It lets you kind of take a break from the main game loop. It gives you something else to focus on. You can even be used in instances where secrets can be found. You can clear puzzles, find a nice secret. And another thing that these games have in common is they make things obvious and they don't try and trick the player. Anything you can see, you can get to. If there's a secret, you'll know how to get it. Whether that's you need to upgrade, if you need to take a different route to get around that way, they'll make it pretty obvious to you. So let's talk about now why combat and action platformers don't work sometimes. And this is a big one. Combat takes a back seat or is an afterthought to the adventure. Enemies function kind of like an obstacle. That's not anything too bad. If you play action platformers, platformers are built on that, enemies as obstacles. But in an action platformer, you'd expect enemies to be kind of fleshed out. You don't want to treat it like Mario, oh yeah, just hop on their head, just an obstacle to complete, right? They're an integral part of the game in this case. Another thing that makes combat take a back seat is the combat can be repetitive. So think about games where you only have like one type of attack. Have one attack and that's it. All you do is punch, punch, punch. There's only one type of punch. There's no upgrade. There's nothing that's gonna want you to keep going through combat in this game. It's all just one type of thing. And also another thing that makes combat take a back seat is no incentive to use any of the other combat mechanics. So let's say in a game where you have about 4 moves or so, but it's all technically one move because all it does is give damage. It doesn't do anything different. There's no situation that's gonna make you think, okay, let me use this specific attack here for this purpose. There's not even any platforming element to it too. Let me use the ground pound to press a button that's on the floor that it can only be used with. Right? There's none of that. There's just 4 different animations of attacking, and that's it. That doesn't really make for a very fun combat system in an action platformer. And also, there's so much combat that platforming is kind of forgotten. There's no verticality in the game. So think back to, like I said, about Sly Cooper, right? You have buildings, you have vantage points, you have vents, you have scaffolding, you have a whole bunch of things around the map that lets you sit at a vantage point where you get a sense of moving up in the world, as a figure of speech here. You get to climb on top of things. You get to get the bird's eye view. You get a nice view of how you can get to an objective. You can make up a route. You can get more options to complete an obstacle. And in some games, there's just no puzzles to keep platforming interesting. So think about games like Ratchet and Clank, right? Where you're platforming and it's kind of getting stale, but there's a puzzle to kind of help break it up. They don't just throw more enemies at you. Kind of takes your mind off of it for a while, where you're just like, okay, now let's continue the grind. I'm ready. After that bullshit puzzle, let's get back into it. And also, the final point being, there's no sense of achievement from clearing any obstacles. So let's just say there's some platforming going on. It's not exactly challenging, but it's not exactly the most difficult thing ever. And you're going about it and you clear it. You don't really feel any sense of enjoyment or whew. That took a while to get through. I know when I was a kid and I was going through Sly Cooper, and there's like those vertical and horizontal laser beams that scan through the floors and on the walls through certain sections. You have to jump right at the right time to get through them. Those used to catch me sometimes. And sometimes when you're low health and you're going through them, it's 50-50 chance you'll die and have to restart the whole thing over, or not. You make it through, you're praising God for that. So in some games, there's just no sense of that. There's no sense of achievement or urgency for anything that you're doing. And it doesn't really make for a fun game. And that's where I come in. So a little bit about me. I'm a small town dude. I've been loving video games for my entire life. It's really all I've had for a long time now. And I'm at the point in my life where I can give back to the kind of community that helped me when things were rough. I can make my own spin on some games that I find really entertaining and kind of maybe give someone the same feeling that I had when I was a kid. And so I have my own action platformer that I'm working on. It's under the code name DD right now. There's a lot going on. It's an action platformer. It's kind of cartoony and surreal. It's funny but creepy. There's a mix of things going on there. And it's in pre-alpha, and there's a playtest that you can play right now. But you'll be seeing some gameplay on the screen as I'm speaking and things like that. But yeah, all of these things that I mentioned here are things I'm kind of taking into account while I'm working on this game. I'm really hoping that I can bring it to you guys and you guys find just as much enjoyment as I did when I was playing Sly Cooper and Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter when I was a kid. I really hope you guys enjoy it. So thanks for listening to me make these points. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video, huh? Yeah, next video.